friends, it's Christy, and I'm so excited to be back with you on the My Favorite Things YouTube channel. Today I'm going to be making a card using the new Let's Curl Up stamp set, and then I'll also be pulling a little gift from the Birdie Brown set Birth Yay. So I've stamped out all of my images on some neenah Solar White cardstock with extreme black hybrid ink, and I'll be coloring with my Copic markers. I'm going to start with this cute little fox, and I'm going to do him in my favorite combo for foxes, which is YR12, YR14, and YR18. I'm laying in my darkest shadows first with that YR18 and giving him a little bit of depth on the part of his tail that is attached to his body. Also where his head would be casting a shadow down on the lower part of his body, and then a little bit on the bridge of his nose and the side of his face near his ears. And then I'm going to begin to blend that out with the YR14. Just making sure to go over the edge of that YR18 so that everything is blending nice and smooth. I'm going to fill in the tips of his ears, and I also filled in his legs. I'm going to leave some little white socks on his front feet because I thought that would just be something cute and fun. And then I'll fill in the rest of him with the YR12. And I will also color him with a second layer off screen. I wanted to save you that time in the video, but I just like how it increases that saturation and makes the blend nice and smooth. So for the white parts of his body, I'm going to use E000 and E00. I'm laying in that E00 first, just with a few little flicks of color, and then I'll blend that out with the E000, and then I'll take my colorless blender and just go over the edge of that to smooth that into the white areas. Once that's done, I will bring in the RV10 to add some rosy cheeks, and I'll also color the insides of his ears with that marker shade. And then I'm moving on to my mushrooms, and I wanted to do something a little bit different, so I decided to color them in a pale yellow. So I'm using Y000, Y11, and Y21. I added some shading on the right hand side with the Y21 and blended out with the Y11 and then the Y000, and I decided to color the mushroom stems just the same shade to match. Then I'm moving on to the little gift, and I'm going to color that blue with BG000, BG000, and BG02. I put my darkest at the bottom of the gift, and I'm blending toward the top. And for the bow, I decided to go for a pale salmon, so I'm using R00, R01, and R02. So I've got a whole bunch of foliage in different styles, so I'm going to do a whole bunch of them with this combo, which is YG61, YG63, and YG67, and I put my darkest toward the stem and blended it with the highlight on the outside edge of each leaf. And then to mix it up, I'll also do two more different green combos. So I'm using G20, G24, and G29 for the next one. And I'm going to do these two plants that have the longer leaves. And I'm also coloring in those little shorter leaves with like a combo of all of the different greens that I'm using. My final green combo is YG21, YG23, and YG25. So I'll do the last two plants with these shades. Just adds a little bit of a brighter green to the foliage. And then I decided I wanted to add a little bit of detail to my mushrooms. So now that they're dry, I'm going to go back with my Y21 and just add a few little spots on them just to give them some texture and a bit more whimsy. I'll use a black gel pen to go over the eyes of the fox and make them nice and bright and shiny, and then I'll trim these images out with their coordinating dies. For my focal panel, I'm taking a piece of Bristol Smooth Surface cardstock and die cut that with the Elegant Rectangle STAX Die-namics, and I'm going to blend on some Distress Oxide ink using the color Tumbled Glass first, and I'm going to bring that in from the top and the two sides and create kind of a white glow in the center. Once I've built that color up to where I want it, I'm going to darken it with some broken china. And this time I'm going to be a lot less heavy-handed. I'm sponging on this ink with a very light touch and using my dauber on the side just to get a little bit of that depth on the outside edges. Then I'll go back to the one that I have with the tumbled glass on it and just blend over that transition area. Then I'll take a little more of that tumbled glass and smoosh it off to the side and water it down. Pick that up with a paintbrush and do some splatter detail. And I just wanted to use the lighter shade because I wanted it to be subtle. So once I have some nice different size drops on there, I will set this panel aside to dry and then bring in the two that I'm using for the ground. And those I die cut using the Grassy Hills along with the Elegant Rectangle Stacks. And I'm going to blend on some Twisted Citron Distress Oxide ink. And I want to be really careful with those little grass pieces because I don't want to bend them as I'm sponging on that ink. So I'm trying to work from below them and blend toward the top just to eliminate any of those getting bent. Then to create a little contrast, I'm going to add in some bundled sage and I'm going to sponge that in from the bottom. So I'm coming from that bottom line and bringing it up onto the Twisted Citron so that I create a nice blend. And I will even go back to my Twisted Citron dauber and go over that transition area again to just smooth everything out. I did the bottom panel the same, and then I smooshed some of the Twisted Citron onto the work surface and watered that down and did some splatter detail with that as well. And then while all three of these panels are drying, I'm going to work on my pattern papers. I'm using the Spring Whimsy collection, and I definitely wanted this kind of olivey pale green. I thought it matched really well with that bundled sage. And then I wanted this pretty floral that has the different colors represented on it. And I thought the plaid went really well with that as well. I'm also going to end up pulling out that little strip of peach colored paper and cutting that down. So I use the A2 Stitch Rectangle Stacks set 2 for the floral and the plaid. I used another one of the Elegant Rectangle Stacks for the green. And then I used the Stitch Scallop Basic Edges 2 for that peach toned paper. So I'm going to adhere those to a sour apple card base. So that just adds a little bit of a border around the outside edge of that pattern paper. So I'll just smooth that into place. And then I'm going to add these little peach strips to either side of the plaid pattern. So I'm just lining that up and making sure that that space above the stitch detail on that border strip is equal the entire way across. Once I have both of those on there, I will trim off the excess and then I will adhere that across the center of the card. And I feel like those strips of peach colored paper just really broke up the plaid and the floral print behind it. They were a little too similar right up next to each other, so having that there just serves as a little bit of a separation. And then I'm going to take this green leaf print and I'm going to add that right in the center of the card. So now I'm ready to start working on my focal panel, but first I need to stamp my sentiment. So I popped the bottom grassy border into my MISTI and I'm stamping Happiest Birthday Ever from the Let's Curl Up stamp set. And I stamped that down a couple of times to get a good impression, especially over that Distress Oxide ink. And then I'm going to pop my card base in my MISTI and I'm going to stamp on the inside to finish that off. And I'm using a sentiment and the little cupcake from that Birdie Brown Birthday set. And then the fox and the little foliage is from Let's Curl Up. And I just love how that ties in with the outside of the card and makes the inside extra special for the recipient. So now I'm ready to assemble my focal panel, starting with adhering the taller of the two grassy borders down to the bottom of that background, and then I'll add the smaller one with the sentiment right over top. And I always like to put together my scenes starting with the largest image first, so I'm going to take that fox and I'm going to tuck him in between those two grassy borders, a little bit more to the left hand side of the card. Then I'm going to start to add all of these amazing little foliage all around him. I'm going to tuck some on the left hand side up behind him, and then I'll fill in a little bit more of them on the right hand side to balance that out. And I want to make sure that I add some really tall ones going up towards the top of the card to fill in that space, and also just to make it look like he's in this little hideout space and kind of tucked away. I'm also going to add the mushrooms over on the right hand side. I tucked one behind that first grassy border and then put one over in front just to create a little bit more dimension. And then I also added the little gift right in front of the fox because I'm imagining that it's his birthday, so somebody kind has left that for him to open. And then I'm going to take my last few plants here and just continue filling in this little scene. Once I'm happy with the placement of everything, I will add some foam tape to the back of it so I can pop that up and just create a little bit of lift on my card, and I'm going to line that up in the center of that green pattern paper so that will make a little mat. And then I'm going to finish off my card with a tiny bit of Stardust Stickles. So I just added it to the ribbon on the gift and then onto the two lightest green plants, just so there was a little pop of it here and there. So I'll lift that up to the camera so you can see how that catches the light and give you another peek at the inside. So I hope you guys enjoyed the December edition of Christy Gets Crafty with My Favorite Things. If you did, please be sure to hit that like button and leave me a comment down below. I'd love to chat with you guys. And don't forget to subscribe to My Favorite Things for more inspiring videos just like these here on screen. Bye-bye!